Hello, NIU Romantics, and let me offer an audible welcome to the course. Let's get right down to business with the text. The first and most important of these books is, of course, this textbook, you could say, of the course, which is the Norton Anthology of English Literature. I really don't care whether you get the 10th edition, the 9th, or the 11th editions are also fine, okay? You got a picture there of the 10th edition. Really doesn't matter. I did want to say this about it. The volume is, I think I sent you a message about this. The volume's not available at the bookstore. It must be ordered by the student. So you have to go and find it on your own, but it should not be difficult. I know a lot of you, or at least several of you, live at distance anyway, and that's why you're doing a distance learning class. So you were probably counting on ordering it for yourselves independent of the bookstore. So maybe this won't be a problem. Now, the bookstore does have copies of the second text that is also a very crucial text, which is Frankenstein. Now, the Signet, I've got Signet Classics. That's what I ordered. I really don't care which one of the ones that what you get, even if you ended up, there are really two editions of Frankenstein, but if you ended up with the other edition, it wouldn't be the end of the world because interesting things happen when we, in fact, find ourselves facing two editions, and I can actually craft questions for those who had the other edition, and interesting things can come out of that choice of revision on the part of the author and the fact that we have two different texts. So they wouldn't be the end of the world if you already have a copy of Frankenstein, or your roommate does, and it's not the Signet Classic. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy the Signet, okay? The Harold Bloom introduction I'll probably end up offering to you anyway, probably posting that independent of the book. But that book, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, is in the bookstore, from what I understand. All right. Now, Mary Wollstonecraft's Maria or the Wrongs of Woman, it's also not available in the bookstore. There's a really good online version of it available at Gutenberg, and I want you to feel free to use that. I recommend that you download it and print it out. It's, it'll be a number of pages to do it that way, but I think that's a good way to do it. It'd be great if you could get a copy of the book, but I don't know what happened. They didn't order this book, and they didn't order the Norton Anthology of English Literature. It might have been a distance learning thing, not sure. This one too, you could order. We don't read it for a few weeks. You should order it immediately though, because we will need it after about, I guess, 3 weeks or even 2 weeks. Actually, this one might be, now that I think of it, this one is something we're going to use a little bit sooner. So you're probably going to be, unless you can just go out and find it somewhere, okay, like at a Barnes and Noble, which is conceivable, you're probably going to have to use the Gutenberg, which would not, again, as I said, not be the end of the world. Okay, this is a panel that I'm sure will gather your interest and keep it focused, right? Because it's what are we going to be doing in the class, right? What is the coursework? Well, as you see, I've broken it down. We have quizzes, we have discussions, we have a midterm and a final, which we'll talk about in due time, right? And then a course project, the exact due date is still to be determined. The exact nature of the project is something that's going to arise over the course of the semester. And what that means is I'm going to see what it is that would be very interesting to have us do, given the way that the course is going. All right, that's worth 15% of your final grade, and it, of course, will not be due until way late in the semester. So that's nothing to worry about right up front. The things that you want to pay most attention to right now are the quizzes and the discussions, okay? Because they're worth a lot as well. That's 45% of your grade, and they're going to be of immediate concern. Even this week, you've got a quiz on Saturday and you have a discussion due on Thursday of this week, usually on Wednesday, but Thursday of this week. And as you see, quizzes, we're going to take a lot of them, right? Discussion boards are going to have a lot of those as well. So both of these are going to matter a lot. This weekly business of the course is going to be very, very important. So the sooner you kind of get in the swing, the better. So just a bottom line, some aspects of the course. Yeah, we're going to do a lot of reading, and you'll be quizzed regularly and minutely on the reading. We'll have a damnable number of picky quizzes. That is just the nature of the game, especially in the era of ChatGPT, okay? We'll be doing a fair amount of writing nonetheless, but it'll be of a slightly less formal variety, and I'm talking about the discussion boards, right? We'll also have this course project, and that will require more formal writing. And again, that's later in the semester. I don't want to say much about it right now. It has not been finally formulated, even in my own mind, but it will probably involve having you visit an artwork or walk out into the woods imitating Wordsworth, visit an artwork, imitating Keats. We'll see how that goes. I'm hoping to make that kind of fun, okay, as well as something that is memorable, right? So we don't have any formal papers in the usual like squibs or final paper, term paper, what have you. We do have this course project, which will be kind of like a paper. We'll have a paper dimension to it, and as I said, I'll talk about that when the time comes. Now, let me just make sure. Okay, I want to get something straight with you right up front about this kind of class. It is not an easy class. This is a hard course. It's a hard class. It's a junior, senior level English class designed for English majors and minors, certainly welcoming of non-English majors, non-English minors, but students who, are up to this, what would be roughly equivalent in humanities to like a math course in calculus. It's going to involve a lot of hard humanities work. And what that means is a lot of hard reading and, these discussion boards, as you know, which is a lot of thoughtful writing that, will challenge you. That's the whole ambition of the course. It should be the ambition, I believe, of any course that you, at this level, ought to be, ought to have one of its dimensions ought to be that it challenges the student to be as much as he or she can be, right? Now, this business about working independently, boy, is that true of one of these online courses, right? Because we're not going to be seeing each other twice a week in class. You have to be able to work independently, know what you're getting into, that you have to just wake up on a Monday or a Tuesday, or sooner, because the questions, as you will see, I'll be posting the discussion board questions on Sunday by noon, right? You have to, Sunday afternoon, you got to look at the questions. I'm not going to send you a prompt. You have to know every week, all right, the questions are there. He told us he was going to post them Sunday by noon. I'll send little reminders, right? But don't depend on those. And you'll go and you'll look at the questions and you figure out which one you want to answer, and you'll start to read through the material. You just have to do this, and you have to do it independently, and it has to be done because it is a big portion of what we're doing in the class. Okay, these discussion boards, as well as the quizzes at the end of each week, which do depend on your having read the poems very carefully. Okay, the poems or whatever it is that I have assigned. So it's not an easy course. Okay, this isn't a gut course for non-English majors. It would be a real mistake to see it as such. And I want you to think hard about whether, depending on what your orientation is and how much your interest is in this material, think hard about whether it's really the kind of course you want to take, because there probably are kind of more easygoing courses out there that you could perhaps enter at this early point. It's only the Monday of the first week. Okay, and just to mention this, I've had some trouble with this in the past where people have just disappeared. I've formed a new policy, right? What I'm hoping to do is to avoid this happening, because it's very injurious to the students' good fortune in the class, right? It's when somebody just stops doing quizzes and stops doing discussion boards. And this maybe will go on for like a month and then try to re-enter the course after just being gone for a month. And there's real carnage being done to the grades and what have you, right? So what I want to say up front is that anyone missing 3 quizzes or discussion boards in a row will be disenrolled from the course, or should it be too late from that, will fail the course, okay? Which I think is a rather draconian rule, but I think you'll thank me for it in the long run, because what I want to do is provide clarity up front. And anybody who does miss 3 quizzes or discussion boards in a row is usually so behind the 8 ball at that point that it's very difficult for him or her to catch up. So I just wanted to establish this as a policy up front that will, provide strong clarity that that's a bad idea. All right? The schedule. Let me just explain some aspects of the schedule. The schedule in general, and I've got what I put up here is the schedule for week 1. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? I haven't posted through the whole year because it's just too much detail to just bother with, right? I could put it up there if somebody is interested in like when something is due in the end of the semester that is not specified and you really want to put it on your calendar, you can ask me and I'd be glad to tell you, okay? With the course project, as I said, I'm still not sure when that due date is. And I do have posted both the midterm and the final. So in a sense, there shouldn't be a lot of mystery about when things are due. But let's talk about, just as an example, and also because, of course, it's of immediate interest, week number 1, our introductory week, which we have now begun. what I'd like you to do is you're watching this intro video, which is getting into the course rigmarole, and of course, as you'll see down below, talking a little bit about the angry prophet, right? Just so that I set you up for one of the items on the discussion board that otherwise might be a little bit mystifying, right? Because we don't have any context established yet for the course. Well, for this week, what I'd like you to do, and just think of this as a week that's a model week. It'll be like every other week. I would like you to read Blake. In this case, it's Blake in this week. And you see all what I have listed there. And of course, I'm giving you all the websites to find the text. Normally, the text will be in the Norton, right? So don't depend on my giving you links, right? Because after about 3 weeks, I'm going to stop doing that. And I'm just going to refer to the Norton, right? So all this stuff is already in the Norton, is in the Norton. So if you already have the Norton, just consult the Norton and don't go to these websites, right? But there you have a list of what I'd like you to read for this week, right? And then what I would like you to do is by Thursday of this week, now normally it will be by Wednesday, end of day, I would like you to submit an answer/response, right? Now you'll, the instructions are posted. The instructions for writing a proper answer response are posted on the discussion board itself. And I talk about them a little further along in this introductory video. So I won't say anything about them right now, okay? Then what I would like you to do is by Saturday, do let me mention this, that normally by Sunday at usually by noon, I will have posted all of the items for that week's discussion board. So you will have those items all week long, all right? From Sunday midday until Wednesday, typically, not this week Thursday, but typically Wednesday at end of day, you're gonna have all those items available, and you can just do it when you want. That flexibility is very nice, isn't it? But no later, as I said, than Wednesday at midnight. Then what I would like you to do is Saturday every week, including this week, I'd like you to take the quiz, which I'll be talking about what I mean by quiz. Under assessments, I'd like you to take it by Saturday of the week in question. And also by Saturday, what I'd like you to do is watch a micro lecture, which is what I'm going to be calling it, every week on the schedule. But in some cases, the micro lecture is really going to be something more like written that I post, okay? So you won't really be watching it. You'll be more like reading it in some cases, all right? So there it is. That's what we'll be doing week in and week out. It's really going to be a very simple process, I should think, okay? Where you know you have something due on Wednesday, you know you have something due on Saturday, you got the quiz on Saturday, you know you have this discussion board entry, contribution, answer/response as I call it. You know you have that on Wednesday, and then of course there's this micro lecture that's going to be posted somewhere in between, and I will be asking you to watch it by Sunday. Okay, just to be perfectly clear, course week this week and every week, by Thursday of the opening week, usually it will be by Wednesday, end of day, submit an answer response. See the instructions on the discussion board. By Saturday, take the quiz, Q1 this week under assessments. Also by Saturday, watch a micro lecture. Usually it will be something that you can watch, or at least sometimes it'll be something you can watch, and at other times it'll be something that you can read. That will be posted under content and will be carefully demarcated for you, all right? Oh, one thing about the discussion boards, they're to be found in the very top of each week's resources drawer. And you'll see what I mean if you go and explore the website. You'll see that I have resources on Blake. And you can tell that's directed towards this opening week. Then I'll say something like, the next one I post will say something like resources on Blake week 2. So it'll be carefully demarcated, once again, carefully designated so that you can find the discussion board, which will be sitting inside that particular week, okay, at the very top of that drawer. And I may establish a depot for all of the discussions, okay, that's independent of the individual weekly drawers, for want of a better word. Okay, so we'll see how that goes as time goes on. Okay, our discussion boards, which are due weekly. Your contribution will usually, almost always be due on the Wednesday. Not this week, I wanted to give you an extra day. Okay, so it's Thursday of this week, but usually on a Wednesday. End of day, midnight is what that means. Well, contribution, I said, your contribution will usually be due on the Wednesday. Contribution, singular. Yes, unless I say different, use just one item and write an answer response to it. Now, I may have you begin to give some comments on each other's answers/responses with contributions. Okay, I may institute that as a practice here before too long. We're going to see how it goes. And if you had to write a comment on each other's answer responses, okay, of a fellow, an answer response of a fellow student, it would probably be due the next day, like at 5 o'clock or maybe even midnight. So that would be something that would be due on a Thursday. Don't worry about that right now. We're going to see how this goes, just doing it, keeping it really simple, and just doing this answer/response on Wednesday night. Should I just blurt out the first thing that comes to mind in answering these discussion boards? No, you know that, right? Carefully consider your response. It's going to be graded. And I invite you to have a look at the criteria for grading discussion board contributions, which is, of course, in the information drawer. Write in complete sentences. Be argumentative. You'll hear me use this phrase. Those of you I had in 200 have heard it before. Be substantive. Be substantial, right? Be substantive. Offer evidence. Quote the text briefly and precisely in support of your claims. Put substance, intellectual substance, evidentiary substance into your response, right? Explain what you quote. Don't just quote it. Make your contribution also substantial. And what that means is at least 4 or 5 sentences. It should have that kind of substance and heft. It should be a paragraph, a good solid paragraph, okay? So not 2 sentences, not even maybe 3 sentences. Now, should I engage in overkill? Because it looks like Professor May really wants us to be substantial. Well, I'll be substantial. I'll contribute a 3-page, 36-sentence answer response. Now, remember, this is a discussion board. It's like a bulletin board. You want your fellow students will be reading it, especially if we start doing comments. They'll be commenting on what you've contributed. Be deft, okay? Be as complete as possible, but also be pithy and be succinct. And try to keep it shapely in the shape of a good, strong, powerful paragraph, which can go on. It can be 7 or 8 sentences, 10 sentences. But you should not give me like a mini essay of 3 or 4 paragraphs, okay? Well, here's a question of great, shall we say, urgency these days. Should I use ChatGPT or some other AI program as a source of answers to the questions on the board? You know the answer to that question. No, by no means, obviously. Students who do so quickly betray themselves and often end up failing the course. If nothing else, they destroy trust. Enough said on that one. Should I consult ChatGPT when I'm done writing up my answer response? No, stay away from it. Well, what about ChatGPT? Stay away from it. Avoid it as if it were the plague. It's revolutionizing, okay, the study of English literature in universities, and not in a good way. So just stay away from it, and I think everybody's going to be a lot happier. Okay, the quizzes, not to be outdone by the discussion boards. Regularly due on Saturday by end of day. I want to keep it very regular this semester, right? Wednesdays and Saturdays. Wednesdays for, this is usually, there may be some departures from this routine, but Wednesdays for the discussion boards and Saturday for the quizzes, end of day, both days. Okay, quizzes, we can have a lot of them, as many as 13, roughly 1 a week. They cannot be made up. I want you to take that to heart. I am dropping your 2 lowest scores. And this practice of dropping the 2 lowest scores that you get over the course of the semester provides a nice cushion for you. You have these 2 misses. You can just blow off 2 quizzes towards the end of the semester if you so choose. But I do advise that you use your misses wisely, okay? Don't squander them early on in the semester. I would get into the rationale for why it is very difficult for me to make up more than 1 quiz. I can't give the same quiz if people want to do a makeup, and it would be chaos in the course if we went down that route. So what I'd rather do is institute this practice of giving you a little bit of flexibility. You can miss 2 of the quizzes. You can't make any of them up if you miss them. The ones that you miss because maybe you're not feeling that well that day or what have you, okay? Or maybe you're busy, or maybe you're going to a wedding. Maybe it's your wedding, right? Yeah, go to your wedding. Don't expect to make up the quiz, okay? That will be one of your drops. So do think of it along those lines, and I think you'll be in very good shape. The quizzes now, what about the content? They will be concentrated on the readings of the week in question, unless I say otherwise. And just that week, not past weeks. Hope that's a little bit reassuring. I'll usually give you 30 to 40 minutes to do a quiz. They're going to be mostly objective, though often I'll ask you to do a little writing and interpreting as well. An example of an objective item, if you drop down to the second example, for another, this time an example of the objective. Which is the poem in which the speaker declares that the analytical mind tends to destroy the object of analysis? And then I give you 4 choices. Basically multiple choice, all right? So that's an example of the objective. An example of this little bit less objective, a little bit more in the way of something that require a little bit of writing, a little bit of interpreting. Quote, write a brief justification for including nutting, which is a little fragment of a poem that we're going to read that Wordsworth originally intended for the prelude and then decided not to include it. On what basis would this make a lot of sense for including it? Or, how could you justify fitting it in? I think that's a hard question, but I think it's a really interesting one, and I think you're going to be up to it. Okay, so that's just examples, the kind of stuff to look for in the quiz. I think you realize we have a quiz coming up this Saturday. We're going to get busy this semester and get you going right up front, right here in the first week. Got a quiz on Saturday. Best of luck on it. So do you have any questions? I mean, it's quite a bit to be presenting to you in this fashion, but it's the only way to do it. If you have any questions, feel free to send them over email. Okay, don't hesitate. Best of luck in the course. And before we part, wait 1 second. Let me offer you some context for question 1 on the disc board. Note the angry prophet roaming through London streets in London, the poem by Blake. I wander through each chartered street near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe, in every cry of every man, and so on. Note how the wandering prophet sees or marks certain things. He remarks them. Quote, marks of weakness, marks of woe. But better, he hears certain things in those, for example, the cry of every man. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind-forged manacles I hear. Hearing is hereby distinguished as a special one of the senses. You'll see how you could say the order in which the 2 senses are presented to us, the evidence of these 2 senses are presented to us by the prophet, right? We have the first one is vision, the second one is hearing, the auditory, and you get the sense that it supersedes the other in some way by following it. Hereby is distinguished then as a special one of the senses, hearing, and perhaps I would argue the most prophetic, or more prophetic than vision at least, the more attuned, more than vision, to the truth in things and experience. Here is our hearing prophet again. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. Note how Blake has underlined his point about hearing by choosing certain capital letters to lead off these 4 lines. This is very tricky on Blake's part, rather crafty, right? What are those 4 words? If you look at the first word, what are those 4 capitals? Look at the first words of those 4 lines. How the chimney sweepers cry. Every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. How every and runs. Line them up and pull out the first letters. And we have how every and runs. H-E-A, ear, or R. Here, he admonishes us. Listen